"We don't serve uniforms." The words hit him like a bullet to the chest. He stood there, frozen, staring at the barista who refused him over nothing more than the fabric on his back. A uniform he'd worn in battle for a country that had already forgotten him. But 30 minutes later, a general walked in, and when he turned toward the crowd, what he said next didn't just shake the cafe. It rewrote history. Welcome to XQ Incredible Stories. Let's uncover what really happened. The morning air bit through the seams of his uniform as he stepped onto the sidewalk, breath forming icy clouds that vanished too quickly, just like he felt in this city. His boots clicked against cracked pavement, each tap a drumbeat in his chest, reminding him of distant battlefields and the promise he once made to stand guard, to protect. Today, all he wanted was a cup of coffee, something warm to thaw the frost settling into his bones. Instead, he tasted rejection. He pushed open the cafe door, the bell's chime echoing behind him, and joined the queue. The scent of roasted beans should have comforted him, but instead it mocked him, so close yet out of reach. When his turn came, he offered a polite nod, voice steady despite the tremor beneath. "Just a black coffee, please." The barista's eyes flicked downward, tracing the crisp insignia on his chest before lifting in disinterest. "We don't serve uniforms," she said, voice flat as concrete. "Invisible." The single word landed like a slap, igniting a flare of anger that surprised him. He stared at her, heart pounding. The uniform he wore, once a symbol of honor, felt heavy as chain. He had carried it through firefights and ceremonies, under desert suns and stormy skies. Now it marked him as something undeserving, something to be turned away. His reflection in the glass display caught him off guard. Soldiers make the best ghosts, he thought. A mask of calm, hiding every scar. No one asked about the nights he couldn't sleep, haunted by memory. No one cared about the medals tucked away in a drawer back home. They saw only the fabric, the label. He stepped back, the bitterness coiling in his gut. And that's when it snapped. A low, humming anger, burning brighter than the first morning light. He gathered himself, shoulders squared, jaw set. The line behind him shuffled, impatient. Outside, the wind carried a promise. Justice begins when you refuse to be ignored. And dawn had barely broken. He trudged down the street, the uniform's fabric rubbing against his skin like sandpaper, each thread a reminder of promises he couldn't keep. The morning sun glinted off the brass buttons, little suns of expectation and duty he no longer felt worthy to carry. In boot camp, that uniform had been armor. Now it felt like a cage. His shoulders ached as if loaded with the weight of every life he'd failed to save. The collar, once pressed crisp by loving hands, now frayed from months of rough laundry, held the scent of stale sweat and old hopes. He remembered the first time he'd slipped into it as a recruit, heart pounding with pride. That pride was gone, evaporated like mist over scorched earth. Passing a storefront mirror, he caught sight of himself, gaunt cheeks, hollow eyes, the uniform hanging on him like a coat he'd outgrown. "Soldiers bear scars you can't see," he whispered, tracing the embroidered eagle on his chest. The emblem was alive with memories of firefights and impossible choices, of brothers lost and agonized prayers whispered in foxholes. Each step felt heavier. He paused at a curb, the roar of traffic pounding in his ears like distant artillery. His boots, once polished to mirror sheen, were dulled by grit. He bent down, adjusting a loose lace, wincing as a flash of pain shot through his calf, a souvenir from an IED blast years ago. Invisible scars. He inhaled, tasting exhaust and regret. The uniform insisted on its presence, a silent testimony to service and sacrifice, demanding respect he no longer believed he deserved. He slid his hands into his pockets, fingers brushing against the jagged edges of his dog tags. Cold metal, warm memories. He closed his eyes, summoning the cadence of orders barked in the desert night. Discipline, he reminded himself. Discipline keeps you alive. A distant church bell tolled, slicing through the city's murmur. His grip on the dog tags tightened, steel against skin, promise against shame. He lifted his chin, squared his back, and continued on. The uniform's weight would remain, but so would the echo of every step he'd taken for something greater than himself. And the second sunrise approached, indifferent yet hopeful. The city's hum faded as memories surged, vivid as tracer rounds streaking the night sky. He stood beneath a street lamp, its halo flickering, and felt the desert's heat replace the urban chill. The echo of boots on cracked pavement morphed into the thrum of rotor blades overhead. The world around him dissolved. He was back in Kandahar, wind whipping sand into his eyes. The staccato of AK fire rattled in his chest. He remembered crouching behind a crumbling wall, heart pounding like a war drum, adrenaline burning through his veins. His rifle weight was second nature, shouldering it saved lives. That night, he'd pulled a wounded private to safety, each step a battle against pain. A distant siren in the city snapped him out of the memory. His hands clenched at his sides, knuckles whitening. Valor wasn't a trophy. It was a ghost that trailed him into every room. It whispered at night, demanding to be acknowledged, demanding to be remembered. He closed his eyes against the glare of the lamp and heard his sergeant's voice. Carry on. No man left behind. The words had been a lifeline then, a mantra in chaos. Now, they pressed on his mind like weights, reminders of a promise he still carried, even when promise felt meaningless. Footsteps approached. A jogger paused, offering a polite nod before moving on. He felt a pang. There, in that nod, lay a fleeting respect he yearned for. Yet the uniform felt hollow on his frame, a symbol undone by time and distance. He found a bench and sat, the wood splintering beneath him. Each thump of his heart matched a flashback. Dust swirling around medevac helicopters, the sickly sweet tang of gunpowder, the weight of his comrade's lifeless body in his arms. He inhaled sharply, tasting the grit of memory. A gust of wind stirred the dog tags against his chest, the metal clinking softly like distant chimes. They were echoes of valor, echoes of every life he'd touched and every loss he'd endured. Invisible scars, persistent as breath. And in that moment, he realized valor wasn't bound to medals or ceremonies. It lived in the quiet persistence of waking each day, of carrying the uniform even when it felt undeserved. He stood, the bench's splinters forgotten, and stepped back into the city's pulse, echoes of valor guiding each stride. Each footstep felt like a drumbeat of frustration as he neared the café once more. The memory of that barista's dismissal crackled in his mind, uniformed but unwanted, like a ghost haunting his own life. Heat pooled behind his eyes, spreading through his veins like molten lead. They can't keep ignoring me, he thought, breath shallow. The cafe's neon sign buzzed overhead, its glow mocking him. Patrons inside laughed over steaming mugs. The aroma of espresso teased his senses, sharp and sweet, contrasting the bitterness that coiled in his gut. He pressed a fist against his chest, feeling the snap of his heart under the fabric. Anger was rising, slow, methodical, impossible to ignore. He passed a mirror by the door, catching a glimpse of his reflection, jaw clenched, eyes smoldering. Uniform leather creaked as he shifted weight, hands curling into fists. He tasted iron on his tongue, the pulse in his neck hammering. This was no longer just hunger. It was a fire demanding release. Inside, laughter erupted at a table near the counter. A young man teased his friend, voice loud enough to carry. The uniform on his chest felt like a provocation. His breath hitched. The world seemed tilted, every sound amplified. He could feel the edges of his control fraying. A soft, drop a fire if this cracks something open, flashed through his mind, a challenge he couldn't heed yet. He stepped forward, shoulders squared against the tide of his anger. The door swung closed behind him with a decisive thud. Every eye turned, his arrival a disruption. He approached the counter, heart drumming. The barista looked up, recognition flickering. "Back for more?" she asked, voice a half step above condescension. He inhaled, tasting the bitterness and harnessing it. "I am," he said, voice low and steady, "and I deserve to be seen." Silence rippled through the cafe. Steam hissed from the espresso machine, punctuating the tension. He stood tall, letting the fire burn bright, refusing to fade into the background. And that's when the room held its breath. She lingered by the pastries, a woman in a soft coat, eyes like warm embers. He sensed her before he saw her, an unspoken kindness crackling in the air. She caught his gaze for a heartbeat, then lifted her travel mug in a quiet salute. No words, just a simple offering. He hesitated, confusion mingling with relief. Compassion tasted sweeter than any roast. But the hum of the cafe reminded him how fleeting kindness could be. He swallowed, voice tight. I can't accept. She shook her head, fingers brushing the lid. It's yours. Her smile held no pity, only mutual recognition of unseen battles. He saw lines carved by laughter and loss around her eyes, the same scars he carried but tucked away beneath uniform seams. He reached for the mug, palms brushing hers. Steam curled between them, carrying the scent of hope. For a moment, time paused, a shared breath between strangers who knew what it was to carry burdens no one asked about. He raised the cup, eyes locking with hers. Thank you. His words came soft, but the weight behind them shattered the distance he'd built around his heart. A cough echoed behind him, pulling his gaze back to the world. The barista cleared his throat, impatience edged in her tone. You're holding up the line. Heat flared in his chest. Anger and gratitude tangled like barbed wire. The woman's hand slipped away, withdrawing into the crowd before he could offer more than a nod. He turned the cup in his hands, the cardboard sleeve warm against his fingertips. Hope and anger warred beneath his uniform, each sip threatening to undo him. He thought of fallen brothers and empty chairs at family dinners. How one small gesture could stir a tempest in a man's soul. Outside, the wind rattled the cafe windows. He gripped the cup, drawing courage from the stranger's glance. Maybe he wasn't invisible after all. Maybe the uniform could still mean something. He lifted the cup to his lips, tasting more than coffee, a spark of connection. Fire, and as that warmth spread through him, he realized compassion could arrive in the smallest moments, carried by someone brave enough to look beyond the uniform. He ducked into a narrow alley, the cafe's warmth replaced by concrete shadows. The hum of the city receded, leaving only his ragged breath and the thrum of blood through old wounds. He pressed his palm against the rough brick wall, fingertips brushing a scar hidden beneath his sleeve. Pain, like a silent partner, clung to him. Years ago, in a desert ambush, shrapnel had carved through muscle and bone. The hospital had patched him up, but the mind never healed. Flashbacks lurked in sensory corners. The hiss of a mortar, the metallic tang in his mouth, the weight of a dying friend in his arms. He traced the faint ridge on his forearm, remembering the agony that forged it. His uniform sleeve slipped down, revealing pale skin etched with pale lines. Cartographic reminders of trauma. Each scar told a story. A firefight in Kandahar, midnight medevac runs, a convoy ambushed near the border. Invisible battles raged beneath the surface. He carried bullets in his memories more than in his flesh. He winced as a dull ache pulsed through his calf. Another souvenir from a long-ago explosion. The pain was familiar, a constant companion. He had learned to ignore it, to push forward despite the throb, but it lived in his bones like wildfire waiting for a breeze. A distant siren snapped his focus. He slid his sleeve back up, hiding the traces of conflict. No one asked about these scars. No one cared that his nightmares woke him in sweat-soaked darkness, that sometimes a crowded street felt like a Taliban stronghold, every shadow a threat. He swung around, leaning against the opposite wall, eyes closing. He inhaled the alley's staleness, dust, exhaust, forgotten trash, and let himself tremble for a heartbeat. Emotions he'd buried welled up, grief for comrades lost, guilt for surviving, anger at a world that saw his uniform but not his wounds. He straightened, the tremor subsiding. Scars, hidden though they were, made him who he was. He tugged at his collar, steadying himself. This uniform carried more than fabric. It carried every scar, seen and unseen. And though the world refused to notice, he could never forget. And with that, he stepped back into the street, the city's pulse greeting him once more. He settled on a bench in the park, early morning light filtering through budding trees. Around him, joggers and dog walkers passed, eyes averted. The uniform marked him as different, but none paused to ask what he'd given. Sacrifice was a silent ledger, tallying debts no one else saw. He closed his eyes, hearing again the roar of that IED blast. The convoy shuddered, fuel igniting in a bloom of fire. He'd sprinted toward the flames, ignoring orders to stay back, guided by only one thought: no man left behind. Inside the inferno, he'd found the medic pinned beneath twisted metal, veins pulsing, life slipping like sand through fingers. He'd pried the beam loose, hauling him to safety as the truck hissed and smoldered. His chest tightened at the memory, lungs scorched, heartbeat reverberating like percussion. In that moment, fear and duty fused, forging a bond stronger than steel. He'd emerged with burns down his arms and soot in his lungs, but the medic lived. Official reports lauded heroic actions, yet medals gathered dust at home, forgotten relics of a battle no one discussed. He shifted, hands brushing the smooth surface of the bench. The uniform's fabric itched against the raw line of a burn beneath. He'd seen comrades stare death in the eye. He'd held their hands as they whispered final goodbyes. Sacrifice wasn't a moment. It was every morning waking up with grief as pillow fellow, carrying guilt like a second skin. A child's laughter from a nearby playground echoed, bright and free. He watched a family sharing donuts, syrup dribbling down sticky fingers. He longed for the simplicity of their world, where coffee refusals were the worst injuries. He looked down at his dog tags, engraved with a name and blood type, a silent testament to a body that once flowed with the same. He lifted his eyes to the sky, gray clouds framing sunlight. Sacrifice existed between breaths, in every heartbeat that refused to stop even when the mind cried for release. Service wasn't selfies or parades. It was invisible acts that tipped destinies. He tucked his hands into his pockets, palms brushing the cold metal of his tags. And as the park awoke fully, he realized that unseen sacrifice was also unacknowledged strength. He stood, shoulders back, absorbing the morning's warmth. The world might overlook him, but he carried their safety in his scars, a sacrifice etched into every step. And that alone was enough. News fluttered through the park like autumn leaves. A general was scheduled to visit the café today. General Marcus Reed, a legend from the same brigade Alex had once served under. The name sparked a current of possibility, electric and uncertain. Hope was dangerous, but curiosity was irresistible. He finished the dregs of yesterday's coffee, bitterness still clinging to his tongue. Reed's visits were rare, reserved for promotions or funerals. What would bring him here? The uniform on Alex's back felt suddenly charged, as if the brass on his chest might catch Reed's eye. His heart thumped, steady, cautious. He replayed his own story in his head. The ambush near Kandahar, the flash of Reed's fallen medic's boots in the dust. The memory had been buried beneath years of survival. But here it was, nudging at his mind. Would Reed remember? Would he even see him? A passerby's laugh drew Alex back to the present. The day hummed with ordinary life, lawnmowers, distant sirens, but underneath pulsed a new tension. His uniform, once a ghostly shroud, now felt like a beacon. He wondered if Reed's gaze might pierce through every ignored plea and hidden scar. He rose from the bench, resolve solidifying. Curiosity had ignited something fierce, a spark that demanded action. He would return to the cafe, not for coffee this time, but for answers. The thought made his chest ache with anticipation. Footsteps carried him along familiar sidewalks, each step echoing like a countdown. His breath found rhythm, matching the clink of dog tags against his sternum. The cafe's windows shimmered ahead, reflections of city life and a man on the brink of discovery. He paused at the door, fingertips brushing the glass. Inside, Reed's staff bustled, setting up a speaking area near the counter. A podium stood, Microphone ready. The buzz of preparation filled the air like static before a storm. Alex's pulse quickened. Curiosity wasn't just a question, it was a challenge. Could he step into Reed's line of sight? Could he force recognition? The uniform weighed differently now, not just fabric, but possibility. He shoved the door open. The bells chimed sharp against his racing heart. The moment had arrived. He stood at the edge of the crowd, every muscle coiled, torn between seizing the moment and fading back into the shadows. The cafe's chatter hushed as General Reed's aides arranged chairs. A strict line of protocol separated staff from patrons, and Alex felt the boundary press against his bones. He touched his collar, straightening the uniform that had been both armor and shackle. Crossing that line meant risking everything. Potential humiliation, or, if Reed noticed, an irrevocable shift in power. Still, the pull was irresistible. The man who'd once led them through gunfire now stood a few feet away, unaware of the soldier hidden in plain sight. A barista glanced at him, eyebrows raised at his presence near the cordoned-off area. Alex felt her silent question sting. "Why are you here?" He inhaled, tasting caffeine and tension. He didn't come for coffee anymore. He came for justice. He took a deliberate step forward. His boots scraped against the tile, louder than he expected. Conversations fluttered back to life as heads turned. Face registrée surprise, suspicion, curiosité. Some frowned, others whispered. He pressed onward, heat rising in his cheeks. The velvet rope looped around a stand, a simple barrier mocking his courage. He met the barista's eyes. "I'm with him," he mouthed, voice trapped by the weight of the moment. She hesitated, then slipped aside, granting him passage. A hush fell as he stepped within the inner circle. His pulse drummed in his ears, drowning out murmurs. Reed's silhouette came into focus, body rigid with expectation. Alex's palms were slick against his thighs, but each step felt surer. Suddenly, an aide cleared his throat. Reed turned, gaze scanning the room. Alex froze, chest thundering. The world held its breath. Crossing this line meant everything. Honor, redemption, recognition, and perhaps a reckoning neither man anticipated. Reed's eyes settled on Alex. The distance between them shrank to a single heartbeat. No barrier remained. The uniform's weight had pushed him forward. Now, only truth stood between soldier and general. He stood there, on the threshold of acknowledgement, waiting for Reed to remember. He loomed at the front of the room like a living legend. General Marcus Reed, broad-shouldered and composed, a silhouette etched by years of command. The podium spotlight haloed him, casting long shadows that stretched toward Alex, drawing him in. Reed's presence filled the cafe, authority humming through the air like a latent charge. Alex felt the air shift as Reed began to speak. Measured words on leadership, sacrifice, and duty weaving through the crowd. Each syllable was laden with gravitas, the kind earned under fire. Alex watched those around him nod, captivated by the general's calm certainty. He remembered Reed's voice cutting through chaos, steadying their unit in the fury of Kandahar. Time had folded in on itself. A faint tremor rippled through Alex. Did Reed recognize the cadence of shared hardship? He lifted his chin, catching Reed's gaze in the reflection of a polished mug on the counter. For a heartbeat, Reed's eyes flickered, brows knitting in curiosity. Then protocol reclaimed him, and the general's eyes swept past Alex as if surveying strangers. The distance between them felt both infinite and impossibly small. Alex clenched his fists, nails biting into palms. The shadow of Reed's legacy pressed on him. Expectations unmet, promises unkept. Reed spoke of invisible battles, the ones waged inside soldiers' minds long after the guns fell silent. Alex's breath caught. It was as if Reed spoke directly to him across time and space. A murmur rose as Reed paused, scanning the audience. Alex dared to hold his gaze, feeling the weight of every unspoken question between them. Did Reed see only a uniform, or a man shaped by trauma and triumph alike? The cafe fell silent, words hanging in the air like smoke. Then Reed turned, stepping away from the podium, closing the gap between speech and reality. The hush deepened, every eye following his deliberate stride. The general's shadow stretched over Alex, narrowing the divide. Heat licked at Alex's temples as the moment crystallized. And just as Reed came within arm's reach, his voice softened. "I've looked for you." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Alex's heart seized. Reed's words were a key turning in a lock long rusted shut. What would follow when the general's shadow finally fell fully upon him? He stopped dead when Reed's hand hovered over his shoulder, the general's presence compressing the air between them. In that instant, two worlds collided, the sterile command tent of Kandahar and this cozy café buzzing with oblivious patrons. The uniform on Alex's back felt less like armor and more like a bridge between past and present. Reed's gaze bore into him, layers of recognition unfolding behind stern eyes. Memories flickered dust-choked streets, flares painting the night sky, voices shouting orders in a cadence burned into muscle memory. Reed's grip tightened briefly, a silent question. "Was it you?" Alex's pulse spiked, every scar thrumming beneath his skin. Around them, conversations faltered, forks paused midair, steam rising from mugs in suspended arcs. The café seemed to hold its breath. Colleagues of the general exchanged glances, uncertain whether protocol or instinct would guide them next. Reed's aide hovered, hand half raised to enforce distance, but both men ignored him. Alex's mouth went dry. He searched Reed's face for confirmation, a scar above the brow, a hardened crease in his cheek. Reed's voice broke the hush, soft yet firm. "Alex Harris?" The name landed like a salvo. Heat flared in Alex's chest. He hadn't heard it spoken aloud since Kandahar's dusty dawns. He nodded, words lodged behind years of silence. "Yes, sir." His voice shook but held. Around them, the café's pulse resumed, a low murmur underscoring the gravity of this reunion. Eyes darted, murmurs circled. "Who is he? What did he do?" Reed's expression softened, a blend of relief and regret washing over his features. He turned, scanning the room as if seeing it anew. The barista, the strangers leaning forward, the stranger who had offered coffee. All witnesses to this moment where past deeds demanded reckoning. He pointed to an empty chair. "Seat." It wasn't a request. Alex obeyed, each step a journey back through memory and sacrifice. Reed took the seat opposite him, posture easing from soldier's rigid stance to something more vulnerable, an equal seeking answers. And there, amid clinking cups and curious stares, two paths converged. The battlefield's echo met the café's warmth. A shared history, once buried, stirred to life. The collision complete, they sat facing each other, ready to confront what had lain unspoken for years. Alex's chest tightened as he sank into the chair, the café scent of cinnamon and roast fading against the sharp tang of anticipation. Reed's eyes held a storm of unspoken questions, gratitude, guilt, wonder, each flicker speaking volumes. Around them, life pulsed on. A barista wiped the counter. A child's laugh drifted from a corner booth. Yet here time paused. Reed leaned forward, fingertips pressed to the wood tabletop. His voice was low but clear, tremors hiding behind years of command. "Why didn't you reach out?" The question hovered, raw and honest. Alex's uniform felt heavier under the weight of that word, reach. He'd retreated from letters, phone calls, any reminder of who he once was. He swallowed, throat tight. "I thought I didn't deserve," his words faltered. The memory of solo nights, pain and shame twisting together, surged. He believed surrendering his address meant surrendering his worth. "I was lost." Reed's gaze softened. "We never stopped looking." His tone held a quiet ache. "Your family, your unit," they wrote. "I wrote." A pause. "We thought you'd come home." Alex pressed both hands to his dog tags, metal cool against his skin. The tags clinked softly, a metronome marking the heartbeat of unspoken years. "I couldn't face what I'd become." His voice broke. Broken. Invisible. Reed nodded, eyes glistening. You weren't invisible. He paused, chest rising with control breath. When the IED hit, you carried me 2 miles through hell. I was sure you were gone. His words trembled between them, a confession heavy as armor. I owed you my life. Alex's throat tightened. He remembered the blast, the searing pain, the taste of dust and blood as Reed cried out for help. He dragged him through fire without thought for his own flesh. Only did my duty, he whispered, voice rough. Reed reached across, placing a hand over Alex's. Calloused fingers brushed fresh scars. Duty is more than orders, he said. It's the heart behind the action. The touch anchored Alex, a lifeline reconnecting him to a past he'd abandoned. Around them, the cafe buzz resumed, cups clinking. But at this table, two men rebuilt a bridge of trust. Unspoken questions found their answers in shared silence, heavy with forgiveness. And as sunlight slanted through the window, both felt something shift, healing beginning with the courage to speak what once lay buried. Dust motes danced in the cafe's morning light as a sudden flash transported Alex back to that bloody dusk in Kandahar. He was hunched over the smoldering fuel truck, ears ringing, vision tunneled. Shrapnel had ripped through his arm, heat from the blaze searing his skin. And there, Reed lay crumpled, labored breaths hitching between calls for medevac. Time fractured. He inhaled sharply, the cafe's warmth replaced by the sting of smoke in his lungs. Reed's voice echoed. Can you hold him? There'd been no hesitation, only the roar of flames and the instinct to save a life. He'd wrapped trembling arms around Reed's torso, dragging him clear of the inferno as explosions punctuated the night like distant thunder. Alex's fingers tightened reflexively around the edge of the table, knuckles whitening. The scar along his forearm pulsed, a reminder of that night's cost. He saw the medic's mask flicker in his mind, Reed's face framed by soot and fear, eyes wide with disbelief. The memory surged, vivid and unbidden. Reed watched him, concern knitting his brow. That look again, he said softly. Alex blinked, forcing himself back. Sorry, he murmured, voice strained. The cafe's hum returned, cups clinking, barista calling out orders. But the flash lingered, electrifying, consuming. He stood abruptly, heart hammering. Reed rose too, steadying him with a gentle grip. It's okay, Reed said, voice low as distant thunder. You saved me. The words carried weight, a lifeline thrown across years of silence. Alex nodded, chest heaving. Outside, the wind rattled the cafe door. Alex stepped toward the window, tracing the crack in the glass with a trembling fingertip. The world beyond shimmered with possibility and regret. He closed his eyes, letting the flash settle into clarity rather than chaos. When he turned back, Reed's eyes were clear and steady. You gave me a second chance, Reed said. Now it's your turn. The promise in that sentence felt like sunrise after endless night. Alex inhaled, tasting espresso and redemption. The memory's blaze had cooled into resolve. He lifted his chin, forging the moment into action. No longer defined by that flash of memory, but guided by it toward the dawn of what came next. The hum of conversation faded as Alex loosened his tie, the fabric twisting like anxiety unwinding. In Kandahar, masks had kept fear at bay, faces painted in grit and determination. Here, the uniform was his mask now, shielding a man he barely recognized. He tugged at the collar, as though shedding layers of self-preservation. Reed watched, silent and steady. You don't have to hide, he said. No ceremony, no rank, just two men face to face. Alex swallowed, the knot in his throat loosening. His reflection in the cafe window caught him. Uniform crisp, eyes fragile. For the first time, he saw beyond duty's facade. He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a photograph edged with dust. Himself and Reed, grins wide in front of a burnt-out Humvee. Reed's arms slung around his shoulders, their pre-mission bravado frozen in time. Alex traced the lines of both their faces, before the war carved new ones. He placed the photo on the tabletop. Cups rattled as patrons shifted, curiosity stirring. Masks slipped off, replaced by vulnerability. Alex's fingers hovered over the image, hesitating. "This was us," he whispered, voice thick. Reed nodded, eyes misting. "And this is still us." He slid the photograph toward Reed. "I've been hiding," Alex confessed. "Years of silence, grief, and untended wounds. Thinking if no one sees the scars, maybe they'll go away." Reed pressed a hand over Alex's, steadying. "Scars aren't weaknesses," he said. "They're proof you lived through fire." His gaze held truth and acceptance, removing Alex's final mask of self-doubt. A waiter passed, pausing to glance at the photo. The cafe's warmth returned, softer now, infused with honesty. Alex inhaled the scent of roasted beans and acceptance. He slid the photo back, pockets closing over the past and present together. Reed stood, offering a nod that carried unspoken solidarity. "No more hiding," he said. Alex rose too, uniform sleeves bunched at wrists, revealing scars earned in service. He breathed, unmasked and real. And as sunlight shifted across the cafe floor, Alex stepped forward, face unfettered by uniform or fear. Vulnerability had torn away the final barrier. Ahead lay a path forged by truth, every step lighter now that the masks were removed. The cafe's buzz dimmed to a low murmur as Reed's aide approached, tablet in hand, eyes fixed on the floor. Reed glanced at the screen, then back at Alex, brows drawing together. Whatever flickered on that device was brewing a storm. Alex's pulse hitched. Revelation shimmered in the air like steam rising from fresh espresso. Reed closed his eyes briefly, as if steeling himself. "There's something you need to know," he said, voice low. Alex leaned forward, every muscle taut. The room felt smaller, charged with unspoken weight. Even a barista watched, cup poised mid-pour. The aide cleared his throat. "Sir, the records, they've been updated." Reed's gaze sharpened. "Updated how?" Alex's breath caught. Official records were the keys to validity recognition. Reed tapped the screen. Lines of text scrolled. Discharge status corrected. Benefits reinstated. Service record restored with full honors. Beneath it, an entry flagged in bold. Personal message from General Reed. Mustard Seed Cafe, May 7th. Alex's name appeared alongside a terse note. "To Private Harris, thank you for your service." A nation's debt acknowledged. A hush swallowed the room. Alex's uniform felt alive, brass buttons reflecting a new light. His eyes flicked to Reed. "You did this?" he whispered. Reed nodded, emotion coloring his tone. "You deserved it years ago." Alex's vision blurred. Relief, disbelief, anger all tangled in his chest. He'd walked these streets as a ghost, denied benefits, denied acknowledgement. Now his record gleamed official, every sacrifice validated. I don't know what to say." His voice trembled, tasting like confession. Reed reached across the table, covering Alex's hand. "Say you let us help." The simple plea held the weight of a promise. Around them, the cafe exhaled, life resuming with renewed warmth and awe. Alex rose, eyes misting. He straightened the uniform that had felt like prison and now felt like home. "I will," he said, voice steady. The revelation had brewed into action. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the neon sign. Inside, Alex's world shifted, invisible chains breaking, recognition poured like rich coffee into an empty cup. And as gratitude settled in his bones, he offered the first genuine smile in years. "Drop a fire if this hit you, and comment, 'This was me,' if you've ever waited for your service to matter." Steam curled from his coffee cup as Alex rejoined Reed at the table, the tablet's glow still lingering in the general's hand. Around them, murmurs threaded through the cafe, news of corrected records spreading like wildfire. He set the tablet down, voice steady despite the tremor beneath. "There's more," he said. Alex's stomach clenched. What else had lain buried? Reed drew a breath. "Colonel Martinez contacted me last night. He uncovered a misfiled report from your final tour, a recommendation for the Silver Star. It never made it into the official citation." He tapped the tablet, revealing a scanned memo smudged with ink, Staff Sergeant Harris displayed conspicuous gallantry under fire. Recommend Silver Star. Alex's breath caught at the faded signature. The barista, now drawn close, watched with wide eyes. Alex felt their gaze sharpen into focus, not as a uniform, but as a man wronged. They found it, he whispered. Reed nodded. The same administrative errors that cost you benefits hid this, too. Anger flared, a slow burn of injustice. He tasted it, metal on his tongue. 15 years, he said, voice low. 15 years without acknowledgement. His fists clenched around the ceramic cup, knuckles paling. Reed's expression tightened with regret. I'll personally ensure it's awarded. And publicly. He paused, meeting Alex's eyes. Your story needs to be told. Alex felt the weight of hidden sacrifice lift, replaced by a cautious hope. A hush enveloped their corner as Reed stood, slipping the tablet into his pocket. Today, we make it right. He extended a hand. Alex rose, heart pounding, and shook it, solid as bedrock. Outside, a news alert chimed on a patron's phone. Veterans' heroism fully recognized after a decade of oversight. Alex's gaze swept the café, faces alight with respect. Phones raised to capture his first real smile. Recognition poured in, warm as the sun breaking through clouds. He lifted his cup toward the crowd. To truths revealed, he said, voice clear. The café responded with soft applause, the sound of justice unfolding at last. The air in the café trembled as word spread. Official commendations, reinstated benefits, a silver star on the way. It was as if a fault line had cracked beneath Alex's feet, and the ground itself was shifting. Patrons leaned in, voices hushed and reverent. The uniform he wore felt lighter, buoyed by a force he hadn't imagined possible. He rose from the table, the weight of years lifting with each breath. Reed stepped beside him, a pillar of steady support. Cameras discreetly clicked, capturing the moment a ghost became flesh and blood in the public eye. Alex's heart thundered. This wasn't just his victory. It was a collective reckoning. A ripple of applause began near the counter, growing until the entire cafe joined in. It was gentle, respectful, like dawn breaking after a long night. Alex's cheeks warmed, tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. He blinked them back, focusing on Reed's nod, a silent affirmation that this tectonic shift was real. He extended his hands to the crowd, palms open. Thank you, he said, voice steady but raw with emotion, for seeing me. The words resonated, echoing in every corner of the room. In that instant, illusions fractured. The uniform ceased being a symbol of isolation and became a bridge to understanding. Reed placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. Your sacrifice changed countless lives, he said, voice gentle. Now your story changes us. The magnitude of that statement settled over Alex like sunlight through stained glass, illuminating every fragment of his journey. He looked at each face. The barista whose refusal ignited his quest, the stranger who offered coffee, the aide who corrected the records. Their combined compassion and action had shifted an entire world beneath his feet. He felt their weightless support, a foundation stronger than any bureaucracy. Outside, traffic surged, oblivious to the transformation within the cafe's walls. But inside, the tectonic shift was complete. Invisible lines were redrawn, veteran and civilian, past and present, shame and honor. Alex inhaled deeply, tasting the sweet, sharp tang of justice at last. And as applause faded into quiet reverence, he realized the earth would never settle the same way again. Steam rose in gentle spirals from the cup Reed placed before Alex, the cafe's hum settling into a soft lull. This was no ordinary brew. It was a coffee steeped in redemption, each sip a testament to battles fought and finally acknowledged. Alex wrapped his hands around the warm mug, savoring the shift from lingering bitterness to velvety hope. He lifted the cup to his lips, the roast's rich aroma weaving through memories of gunpowder and dust. This time, the taste was pure, unburdened by judgment or denial. It's perfect, he said, voice thick. Reed offered a quiet smile. Well deserved. Around them, strangers returned to their routines, but each glance carried newfound respect. The barista caught Alex's eye and nodded, an apology in her expression. No words were needed. The coffee itself spoke volumes. Alex exhaled, allowing the warmth to spread through muscles stiff with years of strain. He thought of every door slammed in uniformed face, every begrudging glance. Now, redemption flowed freely, cup by cup, convincing him that acknowledgement could heal wounds no metals ever could. He inhaled again, inhaling more than aroma. Acceptance, recognition, the silent promise of safety nets rebuilt. Each sip dissolved a fraction of guilt he carried for surviving, for asking for something as simple as a warm brew. He closed his eyes, tasting redemption in every note of the roast. Reed leaned back, arms crossed, observing. "You earned this moment," he said. "Let it settle." Alex opened his eyes, meeting Reed's gaze, steadfast, unwavering. The general had orchestrated this quiet revolution, but redemption was Alex's alone to embrace. He took another sip, letting it ground him to the present. Outside, the city's pulse resumed, oblivious to the small miracle brewing inside. He finished the cup, placing it down with deliberate care. The mug's warmth lingered, a reminder that redemption wasn't fleeting, it could endure. As he stood, Alex ran a hand along his uniform, now embroidered with new significance. He faced the café full on, offering a nod of gratitude to everyone within its walls. Today, coffee had become more than a drink. It was a vessel for grace reclaimed. And as he stepped toward the exit into the sunlight, redemption cradled in hollow palms, he whispered, "This cup tastes like home." His breath caught as he exited into the soft afternoon glow, the café's door swinging shut behind him. He paused on the sidewalk, hands trembling as the adrenaline of revelation ebbed away. Tears gathered unbidden, tracing warm paths down his cheeks. He pressed a fist to his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of a heart unburdened. In the quiet aftermath, the uniform felt like a second skin, no longer a cage, but a testament. Each tear that fell was a confession of pain carried too long, nights haunted by nightmares, mornings numbed by indifference. He had worn his silence like armor, but now it melted in the light of truth. Reed caught up beside him, falling into step. His presence was a steadying force. "It's all right," he murmured. "Let it out." Alex nodded, the dam within finally giving way. His tears were not of weakness, but of release, proof that scars could bleed healing as well as pain. A stranger passing by offered a gentle nod, as if acknowledging a shared humanity. Alex inhaled deeply, tasting the city's warmth mingled with saffron light. Each breath dissolved another layer of shame he'd carried since returning home wounded, invisible. He blinked, vision clearing, and met Reed's understanding gaze. I thought I'd never feel seen," he whispered. His voice cracked like a fragile truce. Reed slowed, matching his pace. "Now you are." The affirmation held the weight of a promise. They reached a bench overlooking a narrow alley lined with budding trees. Alex sat, shoulders heaving. Reed remained standing, vigilant guard. For a moment, the world hushed around them. No traffic, no hum, just two souls tethered by fate. Alex dabbed at his face, eyes bright. "I never imagined tears could taste like hope," he said, voice soft. Reed nodded. "Courage isn't the absence of tears, but the strength to let them flow."